Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pierce, and the legend that is Rick the Ukrainian is the only Ukrainian. He's the Ukrainian. There's no other. You don't need to know any other. It's only Rick. And we should have Jonathan Fink, but he is running late and I don't quite know where he is. So he will quite possibly join us toot sweet. But Rick, welcome on board.
It's really nice to see you again, Jonathan. It's nice to be here on ATP. You have, a cozy space, in my opinion, here. Just look at your awesome background. Having also some awesome patches there that I recognize.
Yeah. And I still haven't put, because they're just next to me here. I don't like them too far from me, but my own NAFO patch, which was beautifully designed by JR. So JR designed that, and he was done by, as in Jeroen, and it was then properly made into like graphics by Chris, Clockwork Chris, who is a member as well, and that was awesome. But we're of course doing a new fundraiser today. We're all on board with that, and there's quite a bunch of us, which is pretty exciting. Yeah. But before we get to that, and that will be a large part of what we're going to talk about. How are you in general, my man?
Well, I'm working a lot. you know that by how many campaigns I run at the same time. Just like this time, I basically I started a week ago, maybe even less than that, like 6 days ago. I started the biggest ever NAFO truck campaign for our community, which is for 90,000 euros. And yeah, and it's just like, I think we're capable of anything. And if you wish something and you work for it, you will achieve it. No matter how, no matter when. Well, by how I'm not talking about bribing and stuff like that. we just raise funds. And we ask people to help us. By we, I'm talking about me and my guests. I'm talking about Roman Trochimets and Olenivka community with whom we started this campaign. We have amazing patches there. I recommend everyone to go there and check it. We have free Azov patch there introduced, which is very important for me.
Of course, those two patches just there, they are your patches from your previous campaign. So yeah, which I got off you in person, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and this campaign needs your attention, guys, because I will talk about it maybe a bit later if we have time. I just don't want to do self-promotion here for minutes and minutes. I want to keep it short. This campaign plus I am doing this campaign together with you and other awesome channels for my part is $20,000 right away. Like I said, why not do 2 trucks right away? Since we started a campaign for 90,000, it's going to be not that hard to get the 20, here. And yeah, here we are, Rick and Jonathan. We're basically equally centered, you and me. Look, we're symmetrical there, man.
Yeah, beautiful. And we've
just
got
like our Vyshyvankas today.
Yeah, we got Jonathan Fink from Silicon Curtain, Operator Starsky, Andrew Mikado. I don't know who. Oh, Johnny FD, Suchimimus, and War Translated, and the Shills. And at the moment, I'm just absolutely stoked that let's get the latest. That already, my guys have. We've got 84% of the way there. And it's not even been pretty much just about being 24 hours. So that's really, really good news. And we're hopefully going for a second vehicle as well.
Easy, man. Not hopefully, like obviously.
Sure.
I would say obviously here, right?
yeah, obviously. Obviously.
Yes,
And
exactly.
I'm quite excited as well that there's a chance that we might drive them out there in a convoy. So
Yeah,
and it would be great to see you again in person if we can.
yeah.
Although we wouldn't go to Kiev, but I think we'd be dropping them somewhere else. But it'd be great to if we can take the time to come see you in Kiev as well.
Yeah, it would be awesome if you come to Kiev, because I cannot travel to Lviv these days. Not really, and for obvious reasons. I don't have my mobilization status fully sorted, so in any blog post I might just be taken to the draft board and that's it. So there might be no roadblocks on the way, by the way, but you never know. Like, some people say that they get them constantly. Some people say they never get them. I consider myself a lucky guy, but these days I prefer to not test my luck too much. Staying here in Kyiv and Oblast Kyiv region, mostly. So if you have a chance to come here, please come here. Would be amazing. But I know it's not that easy, right?
Yeah. So we'll have to we'll sort that all out. A question here from Marino 4691. ATP Geopolitics. How did this big fundraiser happen, and why suddenly with Car for Ukraine to switch it from the 69th Sniffing Brigade, which is NAFO? Essentially, I was approached actually by someone who was running it, saying, "Would you like to come on board? Here are all the other YouTubers that are doing it." I was like, "Yeah, it sounds like a great idea." And funny enough, Benny Pie, who helps out with my YouTubes, he was going to suggest Car for Ukraine before we did the NAFO one ages ago. And because he had been involved with them previously, I think. But so it was kind of on my radar. They're basically similar like organizations. They're both great. That are just doing fairly amazing things for supporting units in Ukraine. And yeah, just it's two sides of a square for me. In other words, this is, whether it's NAFO or Car for Ukraine, it's just getting stuff to the right people who need it.
Yeah, and same for me. It's not a competition. It's actually a teamwork, even if they are doing kind of same stuff. And in fundraising, you kind of can really drive some money from one side to the other. Yes, because people sometimes say, "Oh shit, I can only donate to NAFO truck campaign, and this month I cannot afford to donate to both of them." But still, more campaigns, more different channels and NGOs like Car for Ukraine or 69 Sniffing Brigade, they can, attract wider audiences. They can reach wider audiences, and that's what teamwork is about. It's about uniting for one main cause. It's saving lives of our soldiers, because the equipment that we provide with these campaigns, raising funds for it, then those two amazing NGOs, they are buying that, they are preparing it completely to be handed over to soldiers, and it's being handed over, and in the end they are saving lives by being able to escape the danger zone, having the wheels rather than having a bicycle. Because Jonathan, have you seen the videos where our soldiers were driving bicycles to the positions?
No, I've seen one where a Russian soldier is riding a bicycle through a minefield in front of a BMP. So, which is a sort of clever way of spotting for mines, because you're not going to set the mines off on a bicycle type thing. But it's kind of like a bit suboptimal. It's a bit. I wouldn't want to be the guy on the bicycle. But yeah, there are so many stories of people not having enough kit, and the right stuff.
Yeah. So basically, I'm really happy that we rollers are able to join another campaign at the same time doing the NAFO truck campaign. Really cool. It's ambitious. It's a bit worrying, because of course I think, oh, whoa, didn't I just took more than I could bitten more than I could chew. So we will see, but I think everything is going to be great, and we're just started. So yeah, Here we go.
Yeah,
Watch
and
us.
and Keith Kane, good to have you on board, Keith. It's great to see you and brother Rick. Love the Vyshyvankas, fellas. We are indeed being all Ukrainian, and a massive shout
Show the
out.
sleeves.
Massive shout out to Mark and Olena Bijq, who provided this to me,
Nice.
sent this to me. It's really, really lovely of you. And I've got a woman's scarf. I forget the name of that in Ukrainian, but a traditional scarf there as well. Yes,
Hustinka.
I think that sounds about right. I mean, I wouldn't know, but I'm fairly sure it's right.
Yours looks awesome, really. That embroidered, that how do you call the?
That's embroidery. Yeah, the embroidery. Yeah,
embroidery, but the pattern. Yeah, the pattern is pretty cool.
Yeah, and your one's lush as well, like a nice black one as well. It's that's nice. But yeah, I'm really happy with this. They got the design spot on and the size, because my belly's getting bigger and bigger when I just sit in front of the computer like this. So,
yeah,
they got the size perfect.
Jonathan, I don't think you will mind if I disclose the backstory of these black and white Vyshyvankas right before the stream.
No, please do that. But before you do that, let's welcome Jonathan.
Hello.
I don't know if you're going to be able to live stream this, Jonathan, because you've just sort of popped on, and we did start without you. Is that all right?
That's all right. I got stuck in the rain, I'm afraid, and then I loathe StreamYard so much. Sorry if you got if you're sponsoring them, but it does not work for me, and then I have to reboot my laptop, and it doesn't recognize my cam. Sorry, got to get that off my chest.
Oh dear, I'm quite a fan actually. They've been nothing but absolutely fine for me. But yes, horses for courses. So welcome, Jonathan. And we've just been having a little chat we were just talking about Vyshyvankas because we're in our traditional attire.
Oh dear, that's something else I didn't have time to do, but I won't change that.
We can watch you game change. It's fine. It's fine.
That's actually it brings me to the story, right?
Yeah.
Right before the stream, I came here in a hoodie, and I've seen Jonathan in Vyshyvanka, and I'm like, Jonathan, how are you in Vyshyvanka? And I am not. I'm going to undress right now. I went and I took the black one because, he called me a fundraising demon, I don't know, yesterday or the day before yesterday. And I'm like, okay, I need to wear the black one and to be on the black side of the force, on the dark side of the force.
He's on the dark side.
Yes.
Should we now call you, not an angel, but definitely a Jedi of fundraising, Jonathan?
Yeah.
You and your community, you are capable of raising 90,000 euros in just a month. Believe me, you just don't know your potential. You're discovering it, but don't ever say hopefully.
I told you it's a fundraising demon.
Yeah, I am just.
Hopefully, we can learn some of the tricks of the trade,
So we're all on board with this, and it's going well for certainly for ATP Geopolitics in the moment. We're about 85% of the way there. Please give what you can, and if you can't give, you don't have the wherewithal to be able to do that, please spread the word and share. But also, obviously, if you are watchers of Rick and Silicon Curtain, then go to their particular pages. The one I've linked in my description is for mine. And then you can see the little bit of competition going on here, where they put it in the top 5. So that's all fantastic, and there we all are together, which is just really nice to get together and do this, with other people, and it just makes it a nice kind of almost a community, like a meta community thing.
Yeah.
Indeed. How are you? So we'll come back to talk about the fundraising. I'm just interested to see what you guys feel about the state of the war at the moment. It is an incredibly volatile time politically, I think, and I'm interested to see what obviously, Jonathan, you have a tremendous caliber of people that you interview, a great knowledge base, and Rick, you are the Ukrainian and you live there. And so I'd be interested to know, particularly, my viewers will know that I'm not a big fan of Donald Trump, and the incoming administration for me is, I was started getting a little bit, oh, maybe it's going to be all right. You have people like Mike Walls and Keith Kellogg coming on board and thinking that's good. And then all the things he's saying now are just absolutely rubbish. And I'm not in a good place as far as US politics is concerned. But I was wondering whether you guys have different opinions.
Well, I have a lot to say, but I think Jonathan should start, if Jonathan doesn't mind.
That's okay. I can jump in. Yeah, it's
because
really
I will say
yeah.
that. Sorry.
It's difficult because, we try to be analytical on the one hand, and of course I have guests on the channel who talk about the other place, and I think we've been saying this right from the start of the war. It's going to be a test of who crumbles first. Is it Western resolve to support Ukraine, or is it Russia crumbles just because of its own internal idiocy and the fact that they would all follow, they're like lemmings, they will all follow their idiot czar god leader over the edge of a cliff, and I think he's leading them off the edge of a cliff. But will it crumble fast enough? And you've got obviously sort of opposition, so-called opposition diaspora media, who are inclined to talk up the weaknesses in the Russian economy, talk up the weaknesses in the Russian system, because it's in their interests. They want it to collapse because, either they're then going to try and stand for election or whatever. But there's a certain amount of either wishful thinking or I would say almost vested interests in the Putin regime collapsing. But at the same time, it's held out for 3 years, and we know that it could probably hold out for quite a bit more. So is Western resolve going to crumble? Is Russia going to crumble? And of course, with Trump on board, there is a real risk that an already weak Western position is going to accelerate towards something which is even less than weak. It's very difficult to say, isn't it, Jonathan? But when you speak to Ukrainians and when you speak to people who are on the ground, especially those who have friends and sort of tap into this huge amount of communication that's going on in Ukraine, of course, there is a certain amount of, I won't call it despair, but there certainly is a very dark mood and a tendency to paint things in very I can't use the word despair because I don't think that's correct, but you know what I mean. People will describe the situation as not just bad, but very bad, because everyone will know somebody either from school or their family or their close circle who's not only being conscripted or gone to fight, but who hasn't made it back or who is missing. So of course, I think that mood is going to be incredibly dark.
So I despair, to use your term there. I despair at a lack of knowledge that is evident in the highest echelons of power in the US. So when I hear Donald Trump talk about NATO and not understanding how NATO funding works, I think, what the hell are you doing? And when I hear him talk about Ukraine, like he did the other day, and he said this a number of times now, and he said all the cities are ruined and crumbled, and the whole country is just in this state of terror. And it's like, no, you don't. That's literally not what's happening. And then you hear Kash Patel, who might be in charge of the FBI, say, right, we're going to make sure there's an audit of all the money going to the Ukraine. And he's then saying we have handed $100 and whatever billion to Ukraine. It's like, you don't understand how the military aid works to Ukraine, when most of it, the military aid segment of the aid, stays predominantly in the US as a form of economic stimulus and as a way of upgrading your own armed services and procurement and equipment, etc., etc. Like that, the people in charge don't understand the basics of the Ukraine war, and is just it blows my mind. And that's what I get despairing of, because of course they're going to make stupid decisions, have stupid opinions, if they don't understand the first thing about what's going on in this war. And anyway, that's my rant over.
Yeah, I mean, the guy is a class A idiot who will repeat propaganda narratives, but he doesn't know how his own system works. And I think one must hope there's a certain amount of pushback internally from other US politicians within the Republican Party. There will be a lot of pushback from the bureaucracy itself, because they're not going to agree just to be disbanded overnight.
And the DoD and intelligence services, you would hope, would do some pushback.
Quite, yes. One would hope so. I mean, there will be a lot of people who will do stuff out of career interests, and they'll go along with all sorts of nonsense, including state capture. You know, we see that's happened in Georgia over a number of years, and of course under Yanukovych the same thing happened. You know, career administrators will go along with all sorts of stuff that may be at variance with their values. They may not even have that many values. And at some point, you know, you're going to have to decide, are you going to carry on down the route of nonsense, or are you going to step outside of the system? And I think that choice is we see playing out in Georgia at the moment. You know, you have ambassadors resigning, you have civil servants resigning, you have people from the propagandistic media, or what was the media and is fast becoming propagandistic media. You either stay or you go. That same process happened in the 90s and 2000s early 2000s in Russia. And there, 90% of the journalists decided to stay and shill for the regime, even though I think many of them could see where it was going. One hopes that in the US system, there'll be a higher percentage, a much higher percentage of people who resist the tendency towards an idiocracy. But I think the thing about Trump is, we get triggered by his words, but he has no concept of how any of this works. He knows nothing about Ukraine. He repeats stuff that he's told. And he tests it out with his audience. Did that work? Did it not? He does marketing in real time. And I don't think he necessarily understands many of the concepts he's testing out, but he wants to see what plays and what doesn't, and what rebounds positively for him and what doesn't. So rather than being sort of triggered by the utterances, of which there are going to be many, and they're going to be just as ludicrous as some of the stuff we've heard, I think we need to look at the actions, because, you know, frankly, the as long as it takes was a route towards eventual defeat. We have to look at Trump's actions to see whether there's going to be a substantive difference. And of course, I think he's also open to suggestion, which is why, you know, on my channel, we've started trying to create ideas for Trump's team, ideas that fit with his highly transactional, highly narcissistic personality, even give him tools which he could use to beat up the Europeans, because, you know, saying you need to support Ukraine because X, Y, Z might not get through to him. But if you say to him, look, you could give Europe a massive kick up the arse, right? And you could force Europeans to pay 3% of their GDP into NATO, or they will no longer be protected by the US. Okay, this is a risky game, but actually rather a good one, because he might quite like that idea, but indirectly you are making sure Europe wakes up to the threat and invests and potentially helps. So there's various ways, I think, in which, you know, he might be able to consciously aid Ukraine without necessarily it being the direct approach. There are ways in which he could see political advantage by beating up China, beating up Europe, which help Ukraine. There are ways in which he wants to appeal to his base. For instance, he could do multiple things to crash the price of oil. He could drill like crazy in the US. He could put pressure on the Saudis. Saudis and others may preemptively increase the flow of oil to drop prices.
They've threatened to do that actually already. So Saudi Arabia and OPEC, because they are not particularly happy with Russia over OPEC plus shenanigans. Yeah.
But they also might preemptively do that to try to please the whimsical autocrat or would-be autocrat. And this is Timothy Schneider's talked about this behavior, about populations, obeying before they're commanded to obey.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're going to see countries also like, okay, we want to keep this guy on side because goodness knows what he's going to do. He could do anything, right? So let's throw him a bone. Let's do something that we know he's going to like and which can go and sell to his base. Well, dropping oil prices is the obvious one. Oil price drops. Europe is starting to put pressure on Russia's grey fleet. China under pressure of secondary sanctions and the threat of imposition of massive tariffs further withdraws financial support from Russia. Putin is screwed. If all these things come together, he's done.
Yeah, I want to get Rick's opinion in a second, but like my biggest worry is less that they're going to turn the tap off for military aid, although that is a big worry, right? But actually, I'm more worried that Trump, because he's actually said this, he's actually said that he wants a light touch with sanctions. If he lifts his foot off the Russian economic neck with sanctions, then that's game over. Russia, the only way Ukraine, in my opinion, and Rick may differ on this, but the only way that Ukraine can win kind of militarily or get back those territories is for Russia to economically collapse. That has to be one of the things that happens. Without Russia economically collapsing, you will not get any chance of a regime change or troops leaving en masse. So I think that has to happen. And for that to happen, the US has to keep the sanctions going and keep increasing them. And I don't know that Trump's going to do that. That's my big worry.
But
Rick,
Biden certainly wouldn't. By everything Biden's done right from the start, I think has been entirely intentional, and it's to prevent Russia from collapsing.
Right,
so there's
interesting.
Not that much difference.
I don't,
exactly. Amen. You know, I'm not a real religious person, but in this case, I will say that.
I don't 100% agree, because actually they are collapsing now. All the signs are there, and they are from what Biden has done. And I think he's doing it, or not him, his administration is doing it increasingly. And if you look, they are putting more and more sanctions in place. I've flitted around with the ideas of whether drip feeding and not wanting Russia to collapse was part of their overt objections, but I just think that they're very risk averse in terms of nuclear. I think that's the main thing,
John.
Yeah,
it's two sides of the same coin, right? We can't have Russia collapsing because of all the nukes. We can't have Russia being defeated because of all the nukes. So they've played this nuclear card very well. And there was an interesting video by a guy called Michael Naki, who he's one of the few Russian diaspora journalists who actually fundraises for Ukrainian battalions. He actually puts their videos, embeds them within his reportage. For that, of course, he's dead to most Russians. They won't consider him Russian anymore. But he advocates for a collapse. He advocates for Ukrainian victory and says everything depends on it. He has said that there is emerging evidence, and certainly there is rumor, that quite early on in this, Shoigu called his counterparts in the US and basically went big on nuclear, said, right, this is what we're going to do. And it's big and it's scary. Now, we don't think they ever would have done it, but this seems to have worked. This seems to have set a pattern of thinking.
There was a rumor then, October 2022, I think it was, that they had a 50% evaluation that there was going to be a Russian nuke.
And this is coercive manipulation. This is absolutely a Russian strategy, because there's no way they would have knew. It's certainly not 50-50.
Nuclear threatening works, unfortunately. So, guys, are you ready for me to talk?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I just have so many reaction to your points that you're making. So it starts to be too many of them. I start mixing it in my head. But let's begin from the end. Nuclear blackmail and Russia collapsing. What Jonathan Pierce, in this case, says that Russia is already collapsing. Yeah, I think I agree with you, Jonathan. But the problem is Soviet Union was also collapsing, I don't know, since 70s, right? And how long it took for it to collapse. 15, 20 years. And Soviet Union was not actively trying to consume a neighboring country. They were engaged in Afghanistan. They were also doing some proxy wars, but they were not doing a huge full-scale invasion on their borders. And it was relatively calm, and they did not get the coffins every day at their homes. You think it will speed up their collapse? Unfortunately, as a Ukrainian, I must state it will not. It actually holds their nation together. It binds them. It makes them more eager to kill more Ukrainians, because Ukrainians are killing their brothers and sons and daughters, not daughters yet, but some daughters were already killed, I am sure. Anyway, they believe in their propaganda 100%, and nothing can make them believe in the opposite. And in that world that they live in, they don't need, they don't need to see reality. They are okay in the reality where evil Ukrainians want to invade them, and actually already invaded them directly in Kursk Oblast. What other proof do you need? See, what Putin was trying to prevent this. This is why our so-called special military operation happened. We needed to do that to prevent even a bigger invasion. So all of their narratives are in any, crippled, perverted way or another, are being proved to them, to their population. So,
and NATO, aggressive
Oh,
NATO.
yeah.
Look, Finland, Sweden, ignoring. Because Russians in aggregate, and this is a generalization, these are all generalizations, but Russians have been trained not to think strategically. They've been discouraged. Their education system is not geared up to creative thinking and strategic thinking. In fact, quite the opposite. Totalitarian systems do not want their populations to think creatively. And this is a really good example there, Rick, because I was speaking to an academic just this week. She's Ukrainian. She's from the east of Ukraine. Her first language is Russian, and she's kept in touch with Russians throughout Europe, those who fled. She knows some, and this really talks to what you said there. She met a family recently, and for the last 2.5 years, they've actually been one of very, very few, but they've actually gone on demos. They've actually fundraised for Ukraine. And they're having a conversation about what they're going to do next. And the woman was saying, I think someone in her sort of 40s, 50s was saying, do you know what? I'm not sure I'm going to do any more fundraisers. I said, well, why is that? Well, because it was fine when it was on the territory of Ukraine, but they've invaded Kursk now, and that for me is like, what's going on? If you think at all analytically, you'd ask the question, is Ukraine taking Russian territory because they want Russian territory? No. Do they want to keep it? No. Do they want to rule over Russians or anybody else? No. It's a strategic move ahead of likely negotiations. It's a strategic move to put pressure on Putin. It's a strategic move to open up an area where you can practice, combined arms mobile warfare, where you can't on the more static front lines. So there are many strategic reasons why it makes absolute sense.
Yep.
But there's a psychological block, I think, for many Russians thinking strategically. And as you say, Rick, that plays into Putin's narratives, even if it just, for some people means that they neither support the regime and, they're indifferent and they go back to pretending this doesn't exist. Unfortunately, that's, I think.
But Kursk incursion is not a reason more. It's more of an excuse for them. It's not the real reason of Ukraine not being supported that much, let's say, by maybe some Russians who were on our side and really donating, not just saying we're brothers, and you are little brothers, as many Russian so-called opposition like to say. They keep being imperialist, and I'm happy that you mentioned Michael Naki, because he's one of the few who is raising funds for Ukrainian army and buying drones. And that guy is being supported by an international community. It's actually international, not Ukrainian, but it's Ukrainian-based. A lot of members of that community. It's open source intelligence community, InformNapalm, which is fighting Russian propaganda and war crimes. They are investigating their war crimes. They're working together with hacktivists, and they hack Russian generals, deputies, a lot of them. And they collect proofs. And those guys are constantly supporting and shouting out Michael Naki, because Michael is one of the few Russians who really want let's say two things: for Ukraine to win and for Russia to collapse. And this second thing is the main question to every Russian. You got to ask any Russian if they want for Russia to collapse in the end, and if they see this as the only way of Russia not invading anyone in the future, not being an empire, is for it to disassemble as an empire.
On that point, I mean, when you said, they're very far away from collapsing, if you're looking back into the Soviet history and seeing how long they could hang on, but there are certain things that are areas where, to use that same analogy, that foot should be put on the economic neck of Russia and kept there. And one of them is Syria. And I was a bit disappointed to hear, because Syria is this big melting pot of all sorts of crazy stuff going on. And the EU and Turkey and a number of nations and entities saying, right, we need to get in there and make sure that this all goes well, was the Trump administration that said, we want nothing to do with it. And of course, my position should be, you should want everything to do with it, because the one thing you should want out there initially is that Russia does not have presence, full stop. So you need to support whoever can get Russia out of there, because that is a key to Africa, and Africa is a key to funding the war. So if you're talking about real tangible ways of having an effect on Russia's economic collapse, I would say Syria is going to be in there, at least partly.
Listen, about economic collapse, I have some awesome points that I think you would consider. I mean, at least to make an inception into your brain, and just like they've done in that movie.
Surgical probe. We're gonna probe Jonathan with.
Let's do it.
Make sure it's there and not down there.
I have a few points. First point is, what do you see a Russian economical collapse? Because people like to discuss that stuff. And what if we talk not abstract, but exactly? Yeah. They won't be able, let's say, to buy ammunition from North Korea. So they won't have money. Let's say they lose all the $180 billion that they earned in 2023 from oil, right? Let's say we somehow miraculously managed, as the free democratic world, to block all their shadow fleet, and kind of totally choke them on oil. Okay, they lose it. You think they won't be able to buy artillery shells from North Korea? They do barter. They don't need any money. They give them technology.
I'm more, for me, it's more about economic collapse within Russia. So it's hyperinflation. It's what you want is a massive uproar. Not that that's as likely as one might think, but you want the Russian population to be, it sounds horrible, but to really be feeling it.
That's where I think Jonathan Fink will agree with me, that population in Russia is not significant.
Yeah, I know.
For anyone.
I get that, but
they are not subjects. They are not masters of their fate, even when they're in complete poverty. Even they're being put, Russian Kremlin is basically taking most of the Russians by their hair and putting them into the shit with their faces. And they are just, making bulbin sounds from that shit, not really, and not really given any resistance to that, because this is the Russian way. They have slave mentality. And with each single interview with Russian prisoner of war, I can see that mentality And this is why I am very frustrated that I stopped posting those interviews. You really, if you watch enough of them, I watched around 600 to 700 of them, maybe more, maybe up to 8. You basically, you need to dig deep into the Russian mindset. You need to listen to those stories all over again to realize that they won't ever do that. Like 1%, Russian Voluntary Corps, Legion Freedom of Russia, those guys are fighting Putin. But what percent among Russian population is that? It's below 1%. And statistically, way below. It's like, I don't know, 1/10,000th piece of the percent, probably. They are just hundreds among 140 millions. And the thing is, we have that in history, that the masses in Russia were put into total shit back like in the beginning of 20th century after the First World War. They were in the worst conditions. And no, the fact the revolution, right? Back then. They were used,
and I get that, but I wonder if there's a bit of a difference in that the Russians have experienced, at least some of the elites have experienced. I don't know, there would have been elites then, etc., etc. But there's a Western world now where people got used to shops.
They left.
And people have got used to the internet. And that has
they
been
left.
I know most of the people who have got set enough have left, but and it's not just about the people, but in order for there to be an economic collapse or therefore be to regime change, I think you need an economic collapse within like the commercial and industrial sectors in Ukraine that affects people, affects their jobs, affects their income. You need hyperinflation, and then that will also affect the machinations of the rest of it. So they're not getting as much oil as they can. They're not getting as much money per barrel of oil. That you're getting insurance jobs taking place on all sorts of places, and I don't think it all comes together to be an unmanageable mess. And that's the kind of point that I would I think
that's a good point, but you need to consider you need to consider one more variable in this equation. It is China, a huge player there who is obviously supporting Russia. 100%. No matter what they say, they give them technology. In time, they will give them more and more of support. And I believe that China is placing the bid on Russians. And they really will go all in once Russian economics collapse, and they will just take over. And they just need time, and they need to do it bit by bit. So when we talk about Russia and Russian economical collapse, I don't see it possible because China is behind it. And when Russian and economics collapse, China will take over, and China will keep doing that with the Russian cannon fodder. They just need to continue that with all the means.
While Jonathan comes in on that, Rick, as you're speaking, there's a clicking going on. So I don't know if your mic and or headphones or something need unplugging and plugging back in or something.
It could be. Yeah, I'm hearing that. So it's like a little loose connection.
I know what it might be. I'll try to fix it. Thank you.
But as Rick said, I was in Russia for both of the major financial impacts of the 90s. So I was there in 1990, 93, when the hyperinflation got going. So I know how that feels on a daily basis and how it affects people. And then I was there in 98 for the default on their sovereign debt. And they had a
sorry guys, it's me.
And then I'm getting in 98 then they had a currency reset. They knocked some noughts off the currency. They wiped out everybody's savings intentionally, I think, to reset the economy, and for a period of time there was absolute chaos. But it was only for a couple of weeks until things were sort of reset and started to stabilize. But that was, interestingly, I think that was an intentional crisis. So with Rick on pretty much all he said there, and I'm kind of with you, Jonathan. But I think the question is, what happens as a result of it? So I think all these things that come together will trigger a shock that would bring down any market economy. But Russia's now gone down so far the route away from being a market economy. I think rather than triggering a collapse, it will trigger a total return back to the Soviet centralized model. And it will also signal the move to full dictatorship. You could argue that's already happened, but I think they will sweep away the final vestiges of that. Which means you won't get collapse. You'll get extraordinary, poverty and drop in lifestyles and so on. But no one will say anything, either out of indifference, out of fear. Yep. And for those who you described, John, there are people who are sitting there watching this unfold, and it's terrifying. And there are a very small number of people who are genuinely ashamed of what's going on and terrified, and they look around at the rest of the population who have buried their heads in the sand, who have decided they're just going to carry on earning money for their families and go out to cafes and pretend none of this exists. But the regime is geared up to convincing those people they're alone. And there's nobody who thinks like them, and there's no one who can support them, and there's no way for them to go out on the streets to see physical evidence that there are other people who think like them. So, yeah, unfortunately, I think it's going to get much, much worse. I think the economy is going to implode, but it's going to drive them down in some ways the route of doubling down on war and the war machine, and it's going to make them entirely dependent on China. So what does China want out of it? I don't think China necessarily wants to take Europe apart physically at this point, but it certainly will want more of the land that it lost to Russia in the 19th century.
I think China are in this really interesting situation where if Russia wins, China are happy. If Russia loses, China are happy. Because if they win, it's like, you're our mates. We get to continue being mates, and we can sell stuff to you. You can buy stuff from us. We can buy cheap hydrocarbons from you. That's all cool. And if you lose, we'll just walk in and take it, just like Rick was saying, and you'll be properly a vassal state. And
they won't take; they'll be given. Putin is so weak; he will give them the house,
which he's done to Vladivostok to some degree. He's allowed China to have access to Vladivostok, and so I think the whole what China is going to do is interesting, because I think either way China benefit.
Guys, I think China doesn't need to take Russian territory and place it on their maps. They will use a soft invasion. They will use the one that Soviet Union was using, and Russia is actually using. Russia is just putting their puppet government in countries. You see it in Georgia. They will make it their colony just by placing their regime there.
Absolutely.
And
Chinese farmers will come in, Chinese workers will come in. That's already happening, actually, on quite a grand scale. You've got Central European, Central Asian. You've got Central Asian workers coming through. China can increase its influence in Central Asia. It can work through that population. It can directly export farmers and industrial workers and managers into Russian enterprises to replace those that have been killed on the front. And you're right, Rick. It's a surreptitious, slow motion takeover to the point where, when Russians wake up and realize it's happening, in fact, many already do, they won't care because, well, ironically, things will run a little bit better if the Chinese are in charge and not their own guys.
What's worrying me, just quickly, China, you guys probably know that China is using their spying state all over the world now, not just in China. They are selling these devices everywhere with cameras, and some cars are being completely blocked. The electromobile, as we call them here in Ukraine, and I see them blowing up. The market is blowing up in Ukraine, and I'm like, what the fuck, guys? Why are you buying those cars? These are not vehicles. These are spying devices of China, and China will at some point use it against you. And I think China doesn't need to invade countries. China will paralyze the world at some point and make it do what they want. Thank you, Jonathan, for giving me another 2 minutes. Please, let's go to those comments.
Well, I was just going to say something interesting and thank you for all those who have donated, but something interesting about maybe what is different, but potentially what may end up being the same is like the media situation. So when Jonathan was talking about, how it's possibly sliding back into a complete autocracy, like a full-on dictatorship. You might say, well, it's different now because actually they've got access to the internet and, you can use VPNs. But actually, as I reported the other day, Russia's just been trying out this new internally, closed internet system in a couple of regions, and they kind of turned off the internet and were trialing this out. So they've got full intention on putting up a kind of virtual curtain around the nation to just make sure that even those who might otherwise be knowledgeable about life outside Russia will now no longer be able to access information.
This is almost like a sort of quite a Western slant on it, because the assumption we're making here is that the consuming information is tantamount to taking action. And this is where I think Russia is entirely different from the West. And in fact, we are heading, unfortunately, I think, closer to that route ourselves. The possession information is got nothing to do with organizing in the real world, nothing to do with political action, nothing to do with forming classes of group interests and acting, on behalf of those group interests. So that's the first point. I mean, you can have all the information you like. And this is why I think they're not really that fussed about blocking content, because it makes no difference. They know it makes no difference. It's a little bit like the late Soviet Union. Actually, you had a more vibrant dissident sector in the late Soviet Union than you did. But they allowed filmmakers like Tarkovsky and others to create materials for the intelligentsia, because at the end of it, they knew that wasn't going to translate into anything that would threaten their regime. So let them do this. Give them a little playpen or a sandpit. Let them knock themselves out and convince themselves that they have some agency in their lives when they actually don't. Now it's worse, of course, because they've developed techniques. In the Soviet Union, you had monolithic propaganda with an ideological base. They've realized now that non-ideological propaganda works. You can pump out materials that talk to the left, the right, the center, and you can say whatever you like to whoever you like, and they exist in bubbles. And that's fine. You don't have to have a consistent point of view. And in fact, if you create a cacophony of noise, if you create a multiplicity of lies, and then you work those back through an echo chamber, it can create little bubbles of unreality. And it's very difficult for people to break out of those. Very difficult. So I think, unfortunately, they've pioneered forms of propaganda and grafted it onto the old Soviet methods. And when you combine these together, plus the fact that the desire to be an empire, the desire to be part of a power, your life is shit. You go to a shop and everybody on the tram treats each other like shit. They treat each other like shit on the streets, and they treat each other like shit in the chat rooms, and everything is shit. But you can still feel that actually not everything is bad, because I'm part of an empire. I'm part of a country with infinite resources. I'm powerful. I'm feared. So my life might be shit, but I can kind of live through this. And unfortunately, I think they've realized that sentiment is deeply, deeply ingrained, and it works now. It's the reason why Ukraine was invaded. It's the reason why the invasion's carried on, despite the fact that economically it's utter lunacy, and from a humanity point of view, it's evil. It's pure and absolute evil. But people have these deep down desires and projections, which mean I think they will not change. And then they will seek points of view. They will seek, shrink-wrapped ideologies, even if it's just a bunch of kasha and nonsense like the rubbish that Dugin spews out. They will go and try and find a sort of a mishmash ideology that sort of fits not just that sort of irrational worldview, but something that just makes them feel like there's not everything in their lives is completely shit.
But then what defeats Russia then? Because if you're saying, well, economic collapse won't matter because it'll turn into more of a dictatorship.
Weapons, Jonathan. Only weapons will defeat Russia.
Weapons and more
Nothing
weapons.
else.
Defeat in
sanctions
Ukraine
will defeat Russia.
Yeah, defeat in Ukraine, utter humiliating defeat in Ukraine, and then being faced with a huge array of weapons. And then, frankly, to be a little bit crude, democracies need to grow a pair. And they need to.
That's my next question, which is, do you think, I mean, assuming that the US is going to step back and be more isolationist, so, okay, more weapons, but that also requires Europe to really, really step up. Do you think Europe is capable of doing, not capable, do you think Europe is likely to do that, given how successful Russia's been in interfering with our information spaces and causing division inside Europe?
No.
I think Europe is capable of that, but Europe needs leaders, not managers. It needs real leaders with bold decisions, with the will to go all in. They are capable of that. Let's hope that the Christian Democratic Party of Germany,
Friedrich Merz.
Yeah, Friedrich Merz. Let's hope he is going to be the leader and not another weak manager as Scholz is with his delusional ideas of, masochistic ideas of talking to Putin. It was unpleasant to talk to Putin, but I'll do it again. Yes. He said that's ridiculous. And then it's just a masochism. I think Scholz might be, practicing some on his free time. Just imagining, I don't know, guys, we need Europe to have strong leaders. And look what Denmark is doing right now. Denmark is investing hundreds of millions of dollars into Ukrainian weapon production. They are increasing the packages for next year for $1.7 billion. Everyone should be Denmark of year 2024. They are showing the leadership. And, there are countries like Estonia who is giving us the whole reactor of one of their nuclear stations and planning to give 3 more reactors. Like real action. No, like less talks, more action. And they are not talking about it. You cannot see in the media 10 times a month news about the nuclear power plant they're being disassembled. And maybe not nuclear, sorry. Probably hydro power plant.
I reported it as a thermal power plant this morning, but I wasn't sure. I guessed.
Yeah, sorry. Nuclear would be too complicated to disassemble.
But I wouldn't discount that. I wouldn't discount that Putin would try to hit a nuclear station, because there's plenty of evidence that actually they have been sending missiles in the direction
but,
of...
they don't need to hit the reactor itself. They just need to... They were hitting already our nuclear power plants. It was just
substations and...
Substations.
Exactly. Take out the water supply, electricity supply, and water supply that keeps them ticking over. And there's plenty of evidence they've tried to do that already.
And they succeeded to destroy some of our substations. I know that.
Yeah.
It's just not in the news. Everyone is quiet about it. I don't know why, by the way. But...
Well, ask yourself why Rosatom is not sanctioned 3 years into the war.
Well, so I do understand that. As in, like, I'm not sure. I'm not saying I justify that, but the explanations are at least cogent, which is that if nations have had nuclear power stations built by Rosatom and are being serviced by Rosatom, then to turn that off and sanction those nations inside Europe, you are inviting a nuclear disaster, which is why I believe Westinghouse and other like American concerns and European concerns have been trying to get together to be able to provide an alternative to that. And I don't know if they succeeded, but I do understand why they wouldn't have been sanctioned, because and then that's mainly Hungary as well, by the way, but other places too.
I just,
what? Okay, so you said, so Rick, you said Europe is capable of doing it. We need leaders. You've mentioned Friedrich Merz. Jonathan, have you got any idea about European leaders and the probability of us doing it?
You know, I mean, when people talk about, you know, defeating Russia, I think we need to be specific about that. I went to an event earlier this week which had defeat in the title, but when you ask the experts questions about what does defeat actually mean and how you're going to achieve it, you don't get much detail. I don't think we can move forward saying Europe collectively, because if we're going forward on a consensus basis with all of Europe as members of the EU, nothing will happen. It will not happen. And in fact, at some point, Russia will overrun the continent with its Eastern allies. That will happen if we don't organize. So I think we move away from the idea of action as a consensus bloc. Unfortunately, that kind of, to my mind, means that NATO is probably redundant. And the trouble is, in these large bureaucratic organizations, people who exist within that organization do not want to talk it into non-existence because, well, they've got their own personal livelihood and status invested in that. But I think we are close to NATO actually being defunct, actually meaning nothing.
Is this actually evidenced by what's happened this last week when you've had the sort of 5 nations and others maybe as well, Poland, UK, I think France, Germany, maybe some Nordics and Baltics getting together, and Kaya Kallas as well getting together. Is that genuinely what you think is going on there?
Yeah, you need groups of the willing who are going to move away from that, and they're going to say, okay, Germany's on a different track. They're providing this, this, and this, but they're not going to go and do that, that, and that. You will need, I think, sort of regional blocks. So something like the Joint Expeditionary Force is a much better organization. So all these conversations about Ukraine joining NATO, one, it's not going to happen. It is simply not going to happen. It'll be blocked by Hungary and others. And in fact, what deterrence power does that actually have? Because we have not invested in the weapons that we needed to, because we have been pretty much fast asleep for the last 3 years and are just sort of, hitting snooze every time something terrible happens. It has no deterrence power. And in fact, it has relatively little power to, expel a full-scale invasion or even a partial invasion, but it could do. And I think that's not the way Russia's going to do it initially anyway. But all it has to do is to test by grabbing a little bit of territory here, or grabbing some maritime territory, or carrying on escalating the sabotage in a sub-Article 5 way.
Yeah, that's something I've been worrying about. Yeah.
But bit by bit, the concept of NATO will simply cease to have meaning. So before that happens, I think it's much better that we actually develop coalitions on certain issues of countries that are willing to do it. So the ammunition coalition is one, the coalition around F-16s is another. But I think we need something a bit sort of crunchier there. So rather than going on and on about NATO and Ukraine, well, let's get Poland and Ukraine into the Joint Expeditionary Force. And this is a group of countries that have shown already they're willing to take action, not just talk about future actions. The Baltics, the Nordics, Netherlands, Britain, and let's get Poland and Ukraine in. And
I mean, I sort of agree with you, but I also disagree by downplaying NATO, because NATO has been insanely successful as a defensive alliance, because none of NATO has been attacked. And it just, like, self-evidently, it is true that NATO has been a brilliant deterrent. And in fact, had Ukraine been in NATO, yes,
we're not going to defeat Russia by being defensive at this point. So this is a crucial distinction, I think.
Yeah, and also that I think the point around hybrid warfare, or whatever form of warfare you want to talk, because I would include, well, in hybrid you would include information cyber warfare, and I've talked on my channel long about this, which is, when is war war? That to me is functionally the same quite often as bombing a hospital. If you're going to take out a hospital with cyber warfare, it's the same as bombing a hospital. And if Russia are actually doing that, which they are, that is war. And so, when is that enough to trigger Article 5? Now, they have been talking about this. Mark Rutte, I think Rob Bauer from NATO was talking about this recently. When is enough enough? When what is the trigger for Article 5 in these other domains? And I think that's difficult. No one wants to go to war, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know that it doesn't help when someone like Trump is downplaying NATO from within NATO and rubbishing it and pouring scorn on it effectively. That I think is insanely counterproductive. But yeah, you guys can maybe answer this. I haven't seen this video, but Paul Gardner says, can you guys comment on the video posted yesterday by a Danish analyst who tried to explain that Russia's war aims are political influence over Ukraine is not a war of territory, and that if Ukraine cedes territory, they must receive ironclad security guarantees, EU and NATO membership, otherwise Russia has won. I do agree with that. Now you can argue whether that's NATO or like bilateral kind of agreements, as Jonathan was saying, but they absolutely, there's no coincidence that it's obvious why Zelensky has been saying that the point number one of his victory plan is security guarantees. They can't go on without security guarantees. It is absolutely fundamental for Ukraine to get security guarantees. What do you guys have to think about that? I know you've been talking about that, but everyone's muted.
I went to my thoughts. Thank you. And yeah, I kind of got distracted from the NATO and EU talk. I just remembered for a minute that we are losing this war in Ukraine because of the army we currently have, and it's a Soviet army. And you probably heard about the army reform that is needed to be done in our army. All of those talks would mean nothing if we fall. And we, unfortunately, right now on the battlefield, we are really close to the critical point where it's maybe not capitulation of Ukraine, but the huge retreat of Ukrainian forces. You probably don't hear about it much. You don't hear about it in your news, but in Ukraine it's a big thing right now. And we need to deal with it ourselves, Ukrainians. And I won't be telling you much about that, but if you want to research, you can watch Sternenko. You can read Denis Prokopenko, who is Redis, the Azov Brigade commander. You can read his chief of staff, who is talking about Sodol, the Ukrainian general who went unpunished after killing, as he said, quote, more Ukrainian soldiers than any Russian general did. Full incompetence and zero value for the human life. Commanders are being Soviet commanders, Soviet generals. And this is a plague that unfortunately is encouraged. The new officers, not all the brigades are like that. But that plague, it starts affecting effective brigades. Some brigades losing their commanders and some Soviet general is appointed, and that brigade starts losing all the men in a month or two, and they are constantly destroyed. And this is happening this year more often. And you can see what is happening right now on Kurakhova direction. Our forces are being encircled, and this is due to incompetence of the staff who is actually placing those forces and giving them commands. And that is also a result of where friends and family members are placing their own on the positions, the incompetent ones, just to give them some status, some money, some influence, some power. And this is what currently is more dangerous for us than Russia at this moment, because it is directly affecting the picture on the battlefield. I think, Jonathan, you're doing those live map updates. You keep doing them, right? Every day.
Yep. No, I'm at the moment I've run out of time, so I'm doing them sort of every 3 days at the moment. But you get the same picture, and it is the same places are desperate at the moment. It is.
You can definitely state, right, as a constant observer, everyday observer of that. You can state that situation is much worse than in 2023.
It is, you're losing ground quicker than in 2023.
And not just quicker. Our forces are getting encircled more often. Did you notice that?
Yeah, and that's partly because of just the nature of where that's happening in the corner as well, and allowing salients to do that. Where I don't think that was necessarily the situation previously, but it is pretty desperate. It is my personal position, and this could be wrong. I don't know. I'm not there. My personal position is that Russia have been incredibly attrited, but are just throwing absolutely everything at the Ukrainians they possibly can, because it's make hay while the sun shines. Don't know what goes on before January the 20th. Everything needs to be taken now, so that if Trump comes in, Ukraine are fully on the back foot. Ukraine don't have the soldiers and they don't have the equipment. They've got equipment coming in general terms, like artillery ammunition isn't the issue it used to be, but I think generally they just need more units that are fully tooled up, and they also need to be able to smack the crap out of Russia from a distance.
Did you
I think
see
the Soviet thing is really important. I have heard a lot of private conversations about the perils of the Soviet mindset that creeps in, and of course, just in terms of, the good people are going to put themselves forward, aren't they? The good people who have high agency are going to be right at the front, and of course you're losing those people, and it's those that have the more Soviet mindset that are not. I think what the media's got wrong throughout this is to look at land being lost and immediately interpret it as a loss. Attritional warfare means that if you can effectively trade land at an extremely high price for your enemy, then actually that's a victory. So the media's been appalling on just really not understanding how any of this stuff works, and generally, not asking the right people. But as Rick says here, if you're actually losing some of your best people in that trade for land, then it's no longer strategic.
It seems evident to me I keep a really close eye on the sorts of equipment that's being used and lost, and Russia are using equipment that is insanely old or ill-equipped or terrible. So they have equipment problems, and they are using North Koreans. We've got to remember that, and this was one of my big worries, is that Ukraine have done such a good job of attriting the Russians to a level where they've been desperate enough to go and get North Koreans, right? So we have to understand that the Russians are in a bit of a bad situation. But if they can call on more and more North Koreans, like some people have been talking about, whether they have access to 100,000 eventually, and maybe even more, then that is, to me, a game changer. That is the ability, as someone calls them here, Norks. I've been wondering what to call North Koreans in short form. I love that, Norks, although in English slang, that's interesting. They are so short soldiers, they've called the Norks. Yes, absolutely, and that shows that they're desperate. But at the same time, Ukraine is being attrited as well, and no one quite knows, because there's dooming on both sides, exactly who's at a point of capitulation first, and we're playing a game of chicken at the moment, of attritional chicken.
I think right now we can see that Russia is increasing the number of their personnel on the battlefield, together with North Koreans and their own forces, and just basically look at what is happening in our army. Our mobilization is not providing enough people for the army. We heard of 2023 mobilization failed. I think it's not a secret to anyone anymore. And the problem is, as Jonathan says, Fink, you amaze me every time you talk about either Russians or situation in Ukraine, because I want to say every time, like, exactly, yes, you understand it pretty well, and you kind of see that we are losing the best men, the active, the volunteers. We're losing them faster because they are always on the very front. And who remain? The Soviet commanders, the mobilized people without motivation, because they are treated like shit by those commanders, by Soviet commanders, because they are getting exactly into brigades of Soviet commanders. Mobilized people are not really going to effective brigades. Azov brigade is a part, not a part, it is basically consists only of volunteers. motivated people are going to only a few brigades out there. I would name like 5 of them.
And this is your
This
problem
is
as
why
well.
Russia
That
calls them Nazis, right? This is why Russia specifically calls Azov Nazis. This is why they
Exactly.
specifically refuse to trade Azov prisoners, because they're effective, and that's what Russia wants to destroy. It's the effectiveness. It's the individuals who have agency and brains and can organize. This whole war is genocidal, but it's specifically to root out the non-Soviet mindset, because it's seen as un-Russian. I think this is what this is all about. And unfortunately, in those terms, whether Ukraine wins or loses either the full expanse of territory or not, Russia's won to an extent because it is attriting the brightest and the best, and the people who demonstrate their own agency to the highest degree. We're going to have to jump off. I think we've almost got the truck, haven't we?
So let's just go back to some positive. Let's be positive, guys. To talk about our how we're doing in terms of fundraising. JR's got some stats here for how we've been fundraising at the same rate as when we did the NAFO truck, which is amazing because I was on Jake Bro at that time, or Jake Bro was on mine, and it's a huge boost. And actually we're keeping a level pegging with that. And indeed, if I go to here, we can see, not there, we can see that we are, so 9,575. No, let's do an upgrade. No, that is 9. So we are 96% there for the first truck already in sort of 24 hours, which is absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much to all you amazing people who have been a part of that. Really, really generous. So there we are, really good stuff. But please remember, obviously, to help Silicon Curtain if you are a Silicon Curtain listener, and Rick the Ukrainian as well.
We have first 2 donations on my campaign, 100 euros each. So it's already 1%.
Kicking off. Well, I'm going to post the link this evening, and then I'm going to have a 12 days of Christmas posting it all the way through. Jonathan, if we manage to raise, when we manage to raise 1 or 2 trucks, I'm also going to commit to driving it to Kiev.
Same here. So I was talking about that with Rick before we went live. And Jonathan, I would love to be in a convoy with you. We got JR who'll be on board, and Benny Pie. I think it'll be like the whole ATP team. We'd love to be a part of that, mate. So yes, let's do it.
Fantastic. With that, I'm going to jump out, but let's do another one of these, I guess ASAP next week.
Yeah.
And,
before you go,
we can get it hooked into
look what I have here today, guys.
Oh,
my goodness. Because I am a particularly nationalistic guy. No, that's awesome. Thank you
this
for
the
fall. UK love. Jonathan, let's do that. I'm going to stay on. I'm going to give my thanks to all
you
the people.
carry on going.
And
I'll jump out.
We'll carry on.
And I'll
take
you on Monday,
that one earlier, but the conversation was so interesting that I was focused completely on it. And also, thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for being here. And Jonathan Pierce, you're still staying, and I'm staying for the next 10 minutes, right?
Yeah, that's right. Take care, JF.
Bye, Jonathan. Live well and prosper.
Okay, so I just want to do a few thanks, if that's okay.
Before, after that,
please
show the video after that, the one that is in the studio already. Can you see it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that.
Thank you.
Just a few thanks. Thank you to the Weasel for the super sticker there. Thank you to Kevin Forst, who's an awesome supporter of the channel, for the ATP Geopolitics memberships. Really appreciate that. Thank you to Niels Clement for 5 ATP Geopolitics memberships, as well as Richard Bennett. So awesome stuff there. Thank you. BTC Bandit, good to have you back in the zone. Thank you for your support as ever. And Wizard of Ooze, if you convoy, we should have an event to see you off. Yes, yeah. Although, OPSEC. Paul Gilbert, thank you very much. Donated yesterday and proud to help. Thank you. In fact, you were pressuring Paul for us to get another campaign up and running. So thank you for doing that. Mark Biscu, we donated again just because JP made Olena smile by wearing the Vyshyvanka. That's the power of the Vyshyvanka. Absolutely. More power to the Vyshyvanka. Thank you, Mark, Mark and Olin has supplied this. They are legends, one and all. Yeah, interesting comment here. Living the Life 941 says, I was gifted a membership this morning. I watched your visit to Ukraine video. I need to do the 4th one. I'm so behind on them. I'm so sorry. It has changed my view of you and your coverage in a positive way. Oh, thank you very much. It's a bit of a labor of love doing those, and I'm no expert, but I sort of sew them together and they seem to work okay. So thank you for watching that. Really appreciate that. And in fact, you would have seen, if you watched the first one, you would have seen, of course, the great Rick the Ukrainian in that video. So thank you to the Weasel again. Can Ukraine not bid for Syria's seaports? I wonder. Wouldn't it be funny if Ukraine replaced Russia there in managing Tartars? That'd be great. Stephen Bendel, thank you. Russia will go down one way or another. Slava Ukraini. I hope that is the case. We shall see. I mean, by rights, Russia should go down one way or the other. But I just get worried when America starts stepping away. That just gives me the heebie-jeebies. Mary M, thank you for gifting ATP Geopolitics. And then just 2 more here. Thank you, Mary. Johnny Christensen, thank you for your Danish love. Thank you to James Cowley for gifting for gifting ATP Geopolitics memberships. Sarah has a question for you, Rick. There's more foreign volunteers coming to Ukraine. I heard this. Maybe Rick can comment. Are there more volunteers? Do you mean military volunteers, or do you mean humanitarian? I've not heard either.
To be honest, it's really hard to judge. I don't have the statistics. I see only my bubble. I can see that I see the new faces. I hear new people wanting to volunteer, but these are like not even dozens of people. So I cannot tell you anything about this. But the support is still strong. That's what I feel. Really
I think Ukraine should do a bit of what Russia does, which is if you need boots on the ground, just get as many people, foreign volunteers back. But the problem is, the flip side of that is, and we saw this with the British guy that's just been taken prisoner, is that they then become really high value prisoners of war that are far more valuable. And I don't mean this intrinsically in the value of a human being more, but in terms of bartering. It's just the simple case that foreign volunteers are going to be far more valuable as prisoners of war than Ukrainians. And that then becomes more difficult because Russia then gets leverage. But if that wasn't the case, you'd be like, come on, get as many sort of foreign volunteers as possible.
Hi, Jonathan.
Right, let's. So do you want to explain what this is about?
Yeah, this one was filmed just about 40 minutes before the stream, and here you see the soldier. Actually, I explain everything in a video, so let's just watch.
No way.
Yeah. Hi, Jonathan. I have Nord here from Azov, and he received your NAFO truck today.
Yeah.
And
thank you very much for the truck. It helped us to make possible to deliver some drones and other stuff to our guys and make relations. Thank you.
Here it is. ATP Geopolitics and awesome patch here. 42nd.
Holy crap!
Battalion. I actually made it sudden for Nord and didn't tell him what we're going to be talking about. But that's my style. I prefer it like raw and cut, just like it is in life.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan. See you soon. So
I didn't even know the convoy gone.
Yeah, man. It happened today. Your 2 trucks were handed over, and you'll see them in the video either today or tomorrow. It depends on how good I'm gonna be at posting it, how soon I will post it.
Oh my god, that's absolutely bloody amazing. Oh, that looks so cool. Oh, wowzaroonies, mate. So have NAFO released that video of the convoy?
No, actually, this is a separate video. After the handover event, this soldier, I already know him. He's from Azov. He is pretty, a public figure in Twitter in Ukraine, in the Ukrainian bubble of Twitter. And I took interview from him the last time, and this time during the handover event, he forgot to give me something. He messages me saying, "Rick, I want to meet you after the handover, wherever you're gonna be. I'm gonna come to the place." That's my patch. So proud. Daviki designed it.
Right? No. He's got one as well, though. So he's
okay.
just
So he told me, like, "Rick, I want to meet." He gave me his patch that was his his goal, basically, to meet me, and we had a great talk also about the problems in our army and the need of the reform, and not only in the army but in general in the country, what reforms we need. He's an amazing guy, man. You gotta talk to him at some point. Maybe let's maybe
we can do that.
A stream together with him.
Yeah.
The problem is he's really busy right now. He lacks hands. He need more men in his team, and he's doing work for 3 or 4 guys.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have much time for that. But they will increase their unit soon, and I think in a month or 2, there's a possibility that we'll be able to do that stream. I'll keep that in mind. And I would really like you to talk to him.
I would love to, mate.
He said the truck is amazing.
Really?
Yeah. He said, "Oh, this baby is cool. It's Isuzu, but I don't remember the exact model. Awesome NAFO truck." Now I don't know to whom the second went, but I thought, damn, it's destiny. Here's Jonathan's truck that a soldier received today, and I'm actually having a lunch with that soldier. We gotta go outside and make a short video for the stream I'm about to visit in 10 minutes.
Mate, I'm so made up. That's amazing. That's so cool. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
I expected you being
Got tears in my eyes.
Satisfied and excited. I am so happy to see it, man.
Are you likely to see him again in the near future?
Yeah, sure. If he survives, let's hope he survives.
Just give him a big hug from me.
I will. I think he will survive since he's in Azov. And Azov Brigade really values their men. They really value their personnel. But he is saying that Russians are adapting. Russians are really making it harder for them lately.
Yeah.
So the enemy, we could underestimate them in the beginning of 2022, but now we should never make that mistake again.
Yeah.
These guys are not the same army that we've seen in 2022. They are really, really strong and developing army, which is, even though they have savage rules there, and they just use their personnel as cannon fodder.
Yeah.
They have some really nasty technology and stubbornness of an empire that is wanting to get more.
Yeah. It's tough. It's really tough because Ukrainians really need boots on the ground, and they need huge amounts of support, continued support from allies that are fracturing at the moment. I mean, I know Biden and his administration get a lot of hassle, but actually they were strong on the rhetoric, and they have supplied an awful lot of stuff to Ukraine. And there's no doubting that they understand morally what's like. Those people in the Biden administration understand the war in Ukraine. When I look to outside of Walls and Kellogg in the Trump administration, half of them are absolute wingnuts that just simply don't understand the war in Ukraine. I'm like, that's dangerous. That's what I'm worried about. Now, he may end up making the right decisions, but at the moment, he's not saying any of the right things, and that is a problem for me. Because the other thing, and sorry to go on, but Rick, what annoys me the other day is that he's supposed to be this great deal maker, but he's already said, before even going to do negotiations, he said we're probably sure going to reduce the amount of aid to Ukraine. You don't say that before you go into negotiations. It's just honestly, yeah.
The problem is, I think he and his administration, they just don't care about Ukraine. That's the main problem here. That lack of expertise
and empathy
is the lack of empathy. They just don't care, and they don't bother to really understand what is happening. It's just some country in Europe. U.S. is safe. U.S. doesn't fear anyone because they are on a fucking island, which is a continent, and they are not afraid. They have the biggest army in the world. They don't give a fuck about Ukraine. That's the biggest
really
problem.
good point. That's a really interesting point from a position of kind of privilege. Not war.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
They are
yeah.
privileged, especially the politicians. I'm talking.
And because there are many amazing Americans who are contributing
That's
wonderfully.
what I'm talking about. But I'm
who
also talking
understand.
about the ignorant Americans who think that they are the best. Sorry, guys. Sorry, amazing Americans. But you know that a lot of your citizens, a lot of your neighbors are like that. So yeah.
And there are people in, of course, Europe and UK as well who also do not think that this is important or serious, or also do not have the empathy.
Yeah.
And then, of course, in Europe, you've got the confusion in many countries of having a history that's entwined with a Soviet history, such as Hungary, which is then different from Poland, which is again different from Finland, which is different from Slovakia, and there's just a whole mess of But can I tell you, Rick, the good news? You want to hear the good news?
Yeah.
Okay, this it certainly makes me happy. The good news is we have got one truck
Nice.
already for the car for Ukraine. So that is amazing. Just in 24 hours, one
How
truck.
do I switch to yours? Because I have a link for only mine, but not like for the general campaign.
So that is on the general campaign. This one. So on the general. So on the link for yours, a bit of IT up here. So click on car for Ukraine at the top, and then I click on there, and then you go to all their campaigns, and then you click on the right campaign, and then you can go down the bottom of the page, has all of ours together, and then you click on view all fundraisers, and then you get them all there. And we are now ATP Geopolitics. We've raised one truck, which means we're going to do two trucks. Awesome.
Congrats.
Which means it means that myself, JR, and Benny Pie can actually get out there and do that. So
you guys almost beat Mercado.
I know.
Have only
Brilliant.
200, less than 200 euros have left to donate, and you guys have 121 donations.
He's got 12.
He's got 12. You see, man, I'm telling you, you're just discovering your potential. just watch yourself, you know?
Yeah. Well, it'll be nice to first post by the end of the stream. You guys can do that, and we'll be ending in just a wee while. And I feel really bad as well because in all the excitement of going backwards and forwards, I hope Benny Pie is here. But he's not been very well. But anyway, look, that is really cool for all my team, but hopefully Rick's team can also pull together and get his one up and running. But you're a dab hand at that. You've been doing that. You've been doing this long enough. You'll have no problem in raising money for a single truck, will you? You are the demon.
The problem is that lately I get more and more requests, and one soldiers got injured because of the FPV drone hit in their car, and he loses 3 fingers, and he got the burns.
Jeez.
And he says that the surgery for him was not done properly, and he feels a huge pain. They checked him, and they said that you need the new surgery because they fucking did it wrong. And
wow,
you have to pay almost $12,000 for the all new surgeries. And I said, okay, man, we will help you, but I don't know how to raise that much money at the same time. Man, 90,000 NAFO truck campaign, 20,000 here. I have the line of requests of units waiting for me. So it feels like I really am right now biting more than I can chew.
Yeah.
But it doesn't only depend on me. It depends on the whole community, and I believe in this community. I really believe in your rollers. I believe also that maybe your community can also have also will step in and will also help us close this campaign, because in this, I really like how they organized it. Yes, there's a competition, but there's a general goal for all of our, we have general goal of 150,000 euros in this campaign. And when you guys will finish yours, you can switch over to our campaigns.
Yeah, I
and-
like that.
and follow the general goal, because if I finish if we finish our campaign first, we'll definitely switch to the remaining campaigns, and we will promote them, because we're in a team in that. Yeah, we want 15 trucks for 15,000 euros. And hey guys, so I see no problem here. We will do this one way or another, and I think you're going to be the first one, and your community is going to be the first one to close your two trucks fundraiser, and then you will just help us. Also, Jonathan, may I ask you to put the link to our ongoing NAFO truck campaign to maybe the description of the stream? Is it possible?
Yes, you can. You can whack it on the live stream in the comment to the right. If you click on comments rather than private chat.
Okay. Oh, really? Join the chat. But I need to connect my YouTube. Just give me a second. I don't think it's going to be long. Yeah, almost done.
Yeah. So so we have talked a lot about the fundraising today. There's been a little bit of dooming for Ukraine. Things are looking very challenging. The good news is that it does appear that people in Europe are aware of how serious this is, and there are countries that are coming together. There are countries that are meeting. People like Kaja Kallas is being, and the EU themselves are at the forefront of helping Ukraine. I've been pretty impressed with the EU, considering how difficult it is to try and get unanimous votes, considering there's Hungary involved. I've been very unimpressed with Hungary. I think the UK is doing a pretty good job. I think the Baltics are amazing. I think the Nordic states are amazing. I think Poland is vital for the future of Ukraine.
But not amazing at the moment, right?
So yeah, Poland has done a lot. And yeah, I'm a little bit up and down with exactly where Poland are at the moment. I haven't been paying a close enough attention, because Donald Tusk seems to be saying the right things, and then says things like, "Oh, but we're not going to put troops in there yet." Then
it's not only about saying what they're saying; it's about their actions, and actions have been really weak from Poland's side, and in some aspects even damaging to Ukraine. So, unfortunately, they are giving us some bad time these days. Anyway, I cannot post the link into the chat. Only moderators can do it. So please ask JR to help me with that.
Yeah, is that this one? I can do that. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Guys, I really thank you very much, Jonathan. And I really will appreciate if you go to that NAFO truck campaign and get those patches. Just look at them. Ultimate Resistance, which Roman Trohamets represents to me and to many Ukrainian supporters. Javelin patch, which is connected to him, and he was a Javelin operator and low operator. And Free Azov patch. If you still don't know what Free Azov movement is, if you scroll down a bit, Jonathan, you will see the patches up close, the bigger ones. More, here. So Free Azov, guys, is in black and white. Do you know why in particular it's in black and white, Jonathan?
No.
Do you know the MIA flag and POW flag? It's the same flag that US has. It's in black and white. And under American flag, on many governmental buildings, they put the MIA flag. You can Google it right now. Just go Google it in the browser right here, and people will see it. MIA flag. Yeah, here it is. Here how it looks. It's in black and white. It's black mostly with white. And this is to support the families. This is to support the POWs themselves. It is, a sign of solidarity and a sign that they are not forgotten. This one is in black and white because I want to stand in solidarity with them. It has some red on it. Yes. And the storks.
You got the storks there, yeah.
They are flying away to the freedom, because that's what awaits all of them in the end. I'm pretty emotional today because I talked to the families almost every week I go and do the streams from Free Azov rallies that are happening here in Kyiv and all over Ukraine, and also in Europe. Did you know that, Jonathan?
No.
No, you did not know that. Oh my God.
Well, no, I did know that they had them, but not that they had them every week.
Yeah, every week, every Sunday, I go anywhere here in Kyiv where they announce it like 1 day or 2 days before the rally. I go there and I do the stream for 1.5 or 2 hours. I talk to the people who are standing there for the captives. They might be just active members of our society. They might be soldiers, former captives. I've been talking to a lot of former captives. Invaluable content. Like, just imagine the stories that they are talking. And also with the families and with a lot of mothers who, some of them have already cried all of their tears, and also wives and daughters and brothers, sisters. A lot of them are in grief every day, in huge pain. They know that their loved ones are being tortured. They know that their loved ones are being mistreated and starved, and a lot of times to death. A lot of them receive the bodies of their husbands who are being killed in captivity. Jonathan, did you know that in all those exchanges of bodies, they are bringing the POWs? They are torturing them to death, and they are bringing the bodies of registered POWs.
It doesn't surprise me. I was wondering, they had that the claimed cargo plane that was taken down, and then they've now given the bodies back to the people. And I was thinking, because straight away one of the theories was, now they've pretended that all those people have died. They are genuine like POWs. Will they just end up torturing and killing those POWs and then sending those bodies back and saying, "Oh, they all died in the plane crash"? So yeah, I know that's something else, but
so. This topic is very, very important, and a lot of Ukrainians are engaged in this. Please, guys, please, you, Jonathan, start also paying just a bit more attention to that. I am grateful for everything, but you can come to the stream. You can watch the recording on my second channel, which is Rolling with Rick. Since we're Rick Rollers, you can actually find a lot of clips where I interview people. Some mothers of the POWs, some POWs themselves, former POWs. They are on that channel. There are a lot of clips that are done by my awesome moderators. Nikki Hill, Andreas Lech are working on those. Thank you, guys. And, there are so many stories every week, and it's hard to keep up. I understand, but watch a few of them just to realize how big of a pain it is for them, and how important it is to stand with them and be the voice of those captives, and how important it is to to get the badge free as well. No, not that, just to support them. But guys, now you have the possibility to get the Free Azov patch, and now why Free Azov patch is so dear and important to me. Just because I am fully engaged in this every week. I talk to the families. We are doing this. You scroll up, please, Jonathan, and this one to the very top. There is an Olenivka community here. Do you see Rick the Ukrainian, Roman Trochimets, and Olenivka community? Olenivka community is actually a community of the families of the captives, and also of those who were killed in Olenivka in that.
Yes.
Remember
the 53 Azov prisoners who were killed in the prison by a false flag attack.
So we're doing it with them, with the families of those guys who were killed there. So please support this campaign. It will support them also. They are engaged. We're doing it officially with them, and it will mean a lot to me. So guys, it's a hard topic. No one, it's hard to listen to the pain of people, right? And not many people can withstand that every week. But we have no other choice. We need to do it. We need to stand for our captives. We need to be their voices. And I am trying to be their voice. And
good on you, mate.
Rollers are. Thank you. I just wanted to share this with you. Sorry that I take more
No,
time.
that's fine. That's fine.
That was an amazing stream.
I just good news here from someone. Mike in the comments says the European Commission has just banned 22 Russian airline companies from flying anywhere in the EU. Turns out that when you're a terrorist state under sanctions, you can't buy parts to fix your planes. This is why sanctions work, and this is why I know that there are different opinions on this last stream as to what an economic collapse would look like for Russia. My opinion is that we need to expedite a collapse of Russia. Whether it will lead them to go down to a complete dictatorship or this or that, or whether it will mean a regime change is an unknown. But my opinion is it still has to happen. And so news like this is good news as far as the war in Ukraine is concerned.
Every sanction is important, but the thing is, sanctions are, in my opinion, are just a secondary tool. The main tool, the only tool, and Jonathan Fink agrees with me, is defeating Russia on the battlefield. There is no other way to bring Russia down. Sanctions will help us do that. But sanctions is only an addition to the main tool, which is weapons, and well-trained soldiers with great commanders who value their lives, and it's their priority. And we need to make our army this instead of the Soviet army. And I am sure we will succeed. I still am optimistic. It sounds doomy, right? Most of my comments today sounded doomy, but it doesn't mean that I am losing hope. I'm hopeful. I believe in our nation. I believe in great friends of our nation like you guys. Like this nation. And US. And not only in you guys. I believe in every good citizen of this world. And I am grateful to all of you for your support. You've been providing a tremendous support. Let's keep rolling together to our victory. You're getting a new patch when you're here in Ukraine. Damn, it's still not on my board, but I need to show it to you. You definitely missed it, Jonathan.
Okay, well, while you're doing that, I'm just going to say a few thanks. Pete Watson supports Ukraine winning their country back. Slava Ukraine. God bless. Thank you, Pete. That's very kind of you from Australia. And some incredible support for the channel from John Panciotti. Thank you. Thank you for all that you and the team do. Can I just, John and everyone, what a wonderful community. The fact that we have come together and raised for a truck within 24 hours. The fact that you guys, I love you guys. I think I'm so honored that I have and Rick will say the same about his crew as well. I'm so honored that the community around this channel has coalesced over what we think is just absolutely obligatory for us to do. We're obliged to do this because it's the right thing to do. And yes, it's in our best interest as well. This will help Europe, it will help the US, it will help the UK, but this is what is good and right to do. Ukraine have to prevail. Over to you, Rick.
Here it is, man. You, together with us,
to victory.
Are rolling to victory. Exactly.
Nice designs, mate. Your designs are sweet.
This is a design of my moderator and creative director, as I call him, Andreas Lach. So huge shout out to him. You see on the background, there's a flag of Donetsk Oblast. You know that flag, right? The sun, blue and yellow sun, and the coal down there with reflection, yellow reflection of the sun. And those fists, of course, they represent our unity, and we are strong together. And
that's
I think
nice.
we are capable of anything.
I don't think I've seen those flags for a long time. Actually, I did look at all the Oblast flags ages ago.
Yeah. Donetsk Oblast is my home Oblast.
Of course it is. Yes, of course it is.
So it should be there. So we're rolling together to victory, guys, with you. And I am very grateful for this opportunity, this amazing conversation. Thank you, Jonathan. I really enjoyed it. Talking to you and the second Jonathan is always a cool dialogue, and also we we are different in our opinions, but we are very similar with Jonathan Fink in our opinions. And it seemed like we, with him, tried to convince you for all the stream in that Russians, you cannot hope for them uprising and for Russian economy to collapse. But I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. I think sanctions also work, but as I told you, they are just an additional tool, not the main one. And they help 100%.
Interesting. Well, yeah, I mean, I largely agree with you. I mean, the Russians are a population who have never had power. I've talked about this previously. They've never had the experience of enfranchisement, which is democratic power. They've never been in control of their own destiny. And they had, in the 90s, they tried it, but failed almost instantly. And other than that, it's, you know, monarchy, Bolshevism, and you know, central planning, economic central planning to do with in a dictatorship, and they're going back towards that now. And it is a population that has been manifestly unused to dictating their own lives. They have their lives dictated to them. Yep. They don't get to do it themselves, and that means that they're just not used to taking that power, and that is an issue for them rising up. So I do get that. I'm not disagree. I hadn't, you know, I do get that completely. I just think that Russia still needs to be economically crippled. I'm not sure that they will rise up, but I think there needs to be enough discontent, because Putin does keep an eye on that, and that's why he's not mobilized. If he didn't care about the population's opinions, he would have nationally mobilized, and he hasn't. So therefore it is a consideration to him, and if you absolutely hammer them economically, then that will cause for problems for Russia, which I think they need problems.
You know, just I really wish that it is so, and let's just be hopeful.
Yeah.
We cannot lose hope, because when we lose it, we lose our country. Thank you, Nikki Hill. Also, my moderator, Cass. Sanctions would work better.
Oh,
thanks for the
sorry.
excellent stream. That was too fast. If we actually enforced them all, we could have, but we let countries evade them. Exactly. You know, it's all complicated. It's all not that easy, and it's a topic for another stream. Thank you, Bina. Thank you, everyone, for your appreciation, guys. Thank you for all the donations. Before I go, since I'm a fundraising demon, I will lose. No, I won't lose this opportunity to show the flag that is on the raffle this week. You will like it, my friend. 5th Assault Brigade. 5th Separate Assault Brigade. Just look at this.
So you can get that flag in a raffle. Check out Rick's streams. Go and check out his channel. If you haven't subscribed to Rick's channel, obviously do so. That is what you have to do.
It's my PayPal, guys. You can find it in any video, any stream. Just open it, and in the description you will find my PayPal for fundraisers. And send any sum of money. One ticket for this flag raffle is $10. You know, in addition to that, I also raffle in this Christmas season, by the way. Merry upcoming Christmas, Jonathan and everyone watching. Great community. I also am putting a lot of Christmas decorations, and there are 3
I need
this
to
week.
do that.
There are 3 this week. Bandera bird, Ukrainian handmade brand Koza de Reza, all of these. This awesome red cat, just look at it. You can't look at it probably because it's not focusing, right? Oh, like this is better. Yeah. And a cool penguin. Look at it. And these are just a few. So, yeah, you can also get them participating in the same raffle. I will raffle it one after another for all the same tickets that you will be able to buy during this week. That's it.
Excellent. Okay, well, look, go and support Rick's channel. Please go and take part in all the raffles. And thank you so much for getting us to the first car already. The first truck is done. We're almost in first place. It is just a hair's width between us and Mikado Media. So I'm sure we can do that over the course of this day. Thank you, Rick, for your participation here today. And thank you to all of those in the live stream who have been tremendously supportive of both the channel and the fundraising. And thank you for all your wonderful comments. And I haven't gone through all the comments that JR has put aside for me, but I've done most of them. Thank you ever so much. You're all legends. And a big shout out, John Panciotti, again, for your super kindness. And also Mark and Olena get a special thanks for Vyshyvanka, which, as all of you know, the only way I remember this, and I do every time I say Vyshyvanka, at the first time of the day, I usually get used to it. First time of the day, our previous prime minister was called Rishi Sunak, and somebody said the only way to remember it is surely Rishi Wanker. And I know that's a bit of a swear word, but that is what I do. And because it's too many V's and S's and Y's, so I have to go Rishi Wanker, Vyshyvanka. Right, I've got it now, and then I'm fine.
Really cool one. Thank you, Jonathan. It was a great stream. It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
And
always a pleasure.
Next time. Sometimes together with Nord, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Take care, y'all. Stay on the line, Rick, and toodle pits to everyone.
Yeah, Slava Ukraini.
Heroin Slava.
Awesome. Thank you.